What would it take for you to believe that you are enough and that rejection is just part of the process? My guest today is going to answer those questions. Have you ever felt deep within that there's something more you're supposed to be doing, but you're not sure what? Have you ever felt like you're producing a lot, but not expressing at all? Welcome to She Made It. I'm your host, Elle Zimmerman, and I am on a mission to help you cultivate meaning through the path of creativity. Join me to eavesdrop on conversations with brave women who broke through their resistances into a life of authenticity. Because I believe if she made it, you can too. Welcome to this episode of She Made It with my lovely co-host Clara. How are you, Clara?
I'm great, Elle. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. I'm really excited to share today's guest, Jen Joplin, and I am bringing Jen to our listeners. She and I met a couple decades ago when we were both in acting school at Wright State University. I had been at CCM, which I've shared before, a conservatory of music, and made a pivot to an acting school, which is a very different experience. And so I'm really excited to share some of the things we learned.
Yeah, and I've had the pleasure of meeting Jen a few times, and I'm so excited for this episode and for all of her wisdom.
Well, hello, Jen. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me today.
Awesome.
This is wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. And I, again, am so privileged to have you in the studio. We do a lot of different interviews all over the country, and I'm so happy that you're right here with me.
Yes, indeed. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So we shared a little bit with our listeners about how you and I met, and then we sort of reignited, we reconnected. We've just been meeting lately, sort of in a new stage of our lives. And I will share with our listeners that there's so many interesting things that I could talk with you about, and we could have a 4-hour conversation, and maybe we'll have you come back for another visit. But I think today what I'd love to focus on is sort of, you've been a professional actress. You've been in your vocation, your calling since you left college.
Yeah.
But our lives evolve. We go through stages, motherhood, marriage, we change in age. And I guess maybe just share a little bit about where you are right now.
Excellent. I can honestly say, professionally, as an actor, I've never worked this much in my life, which really kind of blows my mind, because I thought as you get older that I was going to have to give it up more and more to do the sensible thing, and not doing that has led to a more solid career and more relationships with theaters and directors, so that now I'm who they think of and I'm who they go to, which is amazing.
Which is a test, which speaks volumes to your work ethic, your incredible talent on stage, your ability to connect with people. Obviously, you're an incredibly likable person, so it's not just this lucky mistake that happened.
Right. It is so many different elements of a career having been worked on, and I think that that's a really important point to make. I love to tell students, because I teach at Wright State. I substitute for now 3 different professors whenever they have something going on professionally as well. I'll step in and teach their classes. And I love to make the point with the Wright State students now that I'm very proud of the fact that I'm a repeat offender. That's what I call myself. So that once I finally get in the door of a theater, that theater almost always has me back, because I make a good impression with work ethic, but being easy to work with, being positive, and bringing just the right energy into the room, the energy of let's give it a try.
Yeah.
It's that improv rule of yes and, not putting up resistance. And it doesn't mean that I don't speak my piece, and it doesn't mean that I don't bring concerns into the space, but I do it with a sense of collaboration, and joy and all that good stuff. So that's important to making a career really work.
Yeah.
I've worked with a lot of people in the last years since we graduated that were unpleasant to work with, and I don't see them out there working anymore. That's not sustainable in this business. Nobody's that talented that it's worth that.
Right.
It's worth working with unpleasant people.
Yeah. And it's amazing how relationships in every industry are really the key, especially now that we're so digital and we're so, quick information. It all goes back to that relationship face to face. You've been a professional actress for all these years, and you said you thought about there might come a time when you had to give it up or look at something else. So was there a pivotal moment? Was there a time that came up for you?
I've worked in a lot of different markets. I did Chicago. I did New York. I did Cleveland for a while. One of the pivotal moments was deciding to have a kid. And I was living in New York at the time. And we actually had to make the choice of, if we were going to start a family, we couldn't remain in New York, just financially. We couldn't do both. We couldn't live in New York and raise a kid at that point in our lives. And so I had to make that decision of taking myself out of one of the most valuable theater markets in the world. I had to make that decision, and that was the right decision. I'm glad that I did, because it's hard enough to do that, to be an actor in New York, let alone be an actor and a parent in New York. But there was also a really pivotal moment in Cincinnati, in the Cincinnati market that I work in now, in this region. We're talking with a friend and a colleague of mine. It was suggested to me that I should make a career move as far as my day job goes, to secure my future in working on the administrative side of theater, in development and that sort of thing, that I should give up acting, because, as this person said, we all have to give up acting someday, Jen. And I hope my jaw didn't actually hit the floor when this person said this, but inside it did. And I thought, I can't believe you are saying this to me.
Well, and I didn't share in the opening, but for our listeners, your father is a professional actor, and how old is he now?
80.
Right.
He just turned 80 this
and he's
year.
Working all the time.
Still, he's quote unquote retired. He works more than most professional actors I know, for sure.
Yeah, so you have an incredible role model that says,
absolutely,
no, we don't need to give up our acting career unless we choose.
Unless we choose to, unless it's not serving you anymore.
Yeah.
If it doesn't bring you joy, let it go, for goodness sake. But, but that helped me make a decision to actually leave that day job and recommit myself to my career and whatever that was going to morph into.
Right, which now you're saying is the height of your success.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not like I told this person, forget it, I'm out of here, I'm going to go be a star. And the next day, here was all these jobs coming my way. It has taken a good 5 years since then to commit and recommit and recommit and recommit. And stay dedicated to the fact that I knew I would be happy and successful if I kept putting my energy into my career, as opposed to a plan B. Yeah. Which there's nothing wrong with plan B if that's what feeds you. Right. But if it's not, I just knew I wasn't going to be happy if I let acting go, if I let the creative side of me go. Yeah. And you also, from what I've learned over the last several months, like sitting down with you almost weekly, you also are sort of, I guess you'd call it a personal development junkie. Like you love to learn, you love to improve, you're always seeking ways to develop yourself, which led to
an incredible performance this last, what was this, the summer?
June?
Yeah, at
Yeah.
the Cincinnati Fringe Festival of your one-woman show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now that's opened many, many doors.
Many, many doors. And I love that you call me a
Personal development junkie.
personal development junkie. I really am, though. I feel like every time I dig a little deeper into any aspect of finding out what yourself is capable of, it opens a new door, into exploring just our journey as individuals and what role we can play for ourselves, for our families, for humanity. And I love going down those rabbit holes. I really do. And I think that what has led to something as risky and crazy as creating a one-woman show, not about some famous woman in history, but about me, was that going down those holes, going down those avenues of self-discovery, I realized that I'm not an actor because I love the spotlight. I'm an actor because I ultimately am a storyteller. And that was what really drew me to theater in the first place, was not I want to be a star, but I want to tell the story that I need to hear, which ultimately, if I need to hear it, so do a lot of other people.
Yeah, and your one-woman show was a beautiful example of that, because it was about you, but it was about women and the time we are in history for the woman and the man.
Yeah.
And it was again, you can tell us a little bit about it. It was a little political, but it actually really wasn't.
Yeah. I didn't want to get on a soapbox about things because I am active as far as activism goes, and making sure that I am a continuous part of politics.
Yeah.
Doing my part, doing my civic duty of voting and educating myself.
And protesting.
Picking up a sign from time to time, for sure. But there are plenty of people telling that story. I definitely wanted to instead tell the story of trying to understand what my role is as a woman in her 40s in a changing country, where how I grew up and how I understood my role as a woman in my childhood has changed drastically over 4 decades, and how I now look at the women in their 20s and 30s, and they have a completely different understanding of their role in this country. And I feel like I'm trying to catch up sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's not, like you said, it's not just women that are trying to understand our role now. It's the men that we stand with day to day. It's my husband trying to understand, well, if your role's changing, then my role must be changing too.
Right. Yeah.
And us trying to make those individual transformations, but also not lose sight of each other.
Yeah.
We're changing together, but we're also changing individually. And I think that's why the country has a lot of growing pains right now, is because we have to change individually, but we've got to change collectively as well.
And the message on media, unfortunately, tends to be very polarizing. There's a hate side, and so what I loved about your one-woman show was that you took the hate out of it. You took the sides out of it.
Good.
You did create an us. And what's happening with your show now? Because I think the reason I'd love to share this is because you took a huge leap by submitting a proposal to do a one-woman show that was not written.
Right.
And you put yourself out there, your story, but the fruits of that are what?
I have 4 different bookings through the end of the year, and they keep coming from different opportunities. I get to go back to Wright State, our alma mater, and share it with new students there. But I get to go to CCM, which I know you have a history with as well, and share it with the theater students there. But at the end of September, I get to take it to Nashville, to the Tennessee Women's Theater Project Festival, which highlights female artists throughout every medium. So theater and dance and visual arts. And
Ooh, I'd like to go.
I know. You should come down and be a
Yeah.
part of it. But I like that they have that week. It's more than 1 week long opportunity to highlight the strong artistic voice of the females in this region.
Yeah.
So it is my absolute honor that they want my voice to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And I think, we talk so often about thinking about your audience. That is my audience. That's talking to
Sure.
women from, hundreds of miles around about trusting your journey. And just because change is happening doesn't mean that you aren't doing the right stuff. Change is part of doing the right stuff.
Yeah.
And finding your next step. And then at the end of October, I get to go to the Statera Arts Conference in New York City. And I had to look this up. I thought, what does Statera stand for? It's Statera. It doesn't stand for anything. It's the Latin word for balance.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, I love it so much. And so this conference its goal is to bring more balance to theater, but to also education, to the arts in general, from the standpoint of making sure that all voices are heard. So it's not just making sure that there's more of a female voice that's heard. It's making sure that there's an intersectionality about this, that people of color, their voices are brought to the stage and to the arts more consistently, and to education. And as we explore all of these different understandings of who self is, so people in transition and people identifying in a non-binary way, and just across the board, making sure that there's more balance in the arts and performance and education. So you can only imagine. I'm
perfect.
so honored.
Yeah.
And I get to do my show there on Sunday morning at 9 a.m., which is not usually when people do one-woman shows. But I am excited to consider that I'm taking people to church that day. So.
And over history, all through time, theater has been a changer of culture. It's been the education of the masses. And so you have the opportunity to really create culture change through your piece.
I love looking at it like that. Something that I do when I'm not on stage or momming or, any of the other things that I do is I do work for a theater company in the development role. And so I write grants and I speak to that importance of the arts, but live theater specifically.
Yeah.
And how it really is an opportunity for us to take a snapshot of any moment in time, especially the current moment in time, and reflect that back to the audience.
Yeah.
So that they can see themselves. They can see where they are right now as humanity, as an individual in this world.
But even if it's a classic piece,
absolutely,
because I saw you perform in Glass Menagerie, incredible performance.
Yeah,
I mean, and that's a classic piece. What's the time period of that? I don't even know. Is it like the 40s? Yeah, but it was so relevant.
Yeah, absolutely, because human beings are human beings, and we've been so throughout all of time.
Right.
It always comes back to the importance of connection. And how damaging it can be when we don't have connection with other human beings.
Yeah.
And trying to find one's true self. Because when you are not acknowledging what's true way down deep inside, that's when we start to go down the wrong path as human beings, because we don't have confidence in ourselves, because we're not being honest with ourselves. And those things, it's so cyclical and it's a vicious circle. If you're not true to yourself, it's hard to connect with other people. And if you don't have that connection, then it just keeps spiraling downwards. And so it's that self-discovery that's so important as an artist, but as a person, no matter what time period
Yeah.
we're talking about, for sure.
And as an actor, what I love, one of the other things I would love to share is that being in a regional market, you are a professional full-time actress, but you also have a corporate role. And I think of, it's like you have a spider web of like security coming in. You don't have one path you're on. You have this like web of connections to support your lifestyle as an artist.
Right.
But as you have been working in some corporate roles, but also always true to yourself as an actress, you're kind of stepping into how can you guide and coach people within corporate America who don't have some of the beautiful insights and perspectives you have because of your training, because of your art. And I'd love for you to share your story of Ta-Da and how you're kind of stepping into maybe corporate work.
Right. So Ta-Da comes from the fact that when I was little, when I was like 2-3 years old, I would just open a door and walk into a room and yell "Ta-da." That was it. I didn't have anything else to back it up. I didn't have a joke to tell or a dance to do or anything else to offer. And my parents loved to tell that story. Exactly. Like that's all I needed to be was just me walking the room and
I love
ta-da. But that's a really easy thing for a 2 or a 3-year-old to harness that idea of I'm enough, and not just I'm enough, but I'm everything. I'm everything this moment needs, right? But then as we grow up, we are very rarely encouraged to hang on to that belief that I'm enough, I'm everything, I'm what this moment needs. As artists, we've got to believe that at the very core of ourselves. Otherwise, we're not going to make it. If we don't believe it, we're certainly not going to convince everybody else that we're everything that this moment needs. But working in the corporate world so much, it is that confidence, not just in your skills, but in your creativity, in your ability to problem solve, to look at a moment where you don't have the answer and know that you've got something to bring to the solution in this moment. You've got something to bring to a team atmosphere. You can stand up with a new idea that might propel your career, that might solve the problem for somebody who is your superior. And you've got something that can create a collaboration.
But how do we find Ta-Da if we don't have it?
That's a really great question. And I think that it comes back to making those great leaps of at any given moment when something inside is saying to you, I shouldn't do that because I don't have the training and I don't, that's too scary. Somebody else will do this better.
Syndrome,
absolutely, absolutely. That tattletale in the back of your head that says you're faking this. Somebody's going to find out that you have no business being here. That's the very moment when you've just got to take a great big deep breath and take a step forward instead of taking a step back. Yeah. And it's, talking about self-improvement and self-help books, that is throughout all of those messages is taking that leap. And
I always say the worst thing that can happen is that you hear no.
Absolutely.
If you don't ask, it's no. If you ask,
Absolutely.
the worst thing could be no.
And when you look at these opportunities, whether it's getting a role in a show, in live theater, or writing a book, a novel, a new play, or taking the next step in your career, no matter what industry you're in, you already don't have it.
Yeah.
You don't have that role. You haven't written that book. You haven't gotten this promotion. You don't have that date. Whatever it is in your life, you already don't have it.
Right.
The worst thing that could happen is that you still don't have it.
Right.
But by taking a step forward,
totally.
and taking that risk and giving everything you are to that moment and that opportunity, you might have it.
Right.
Or you at least might get closer to having what it is that you have this impulse to go for. Listen to that impulse.
Yeah.
And it's scary as heck, but do it. You've got to. And with everything, taking that little step towards something that calls to you, it's never easy, but it does get easier if you keep taking those steps. Because
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So that's I'm so on board with you. I say the same thing. But then what do you do when you do blow it? What do you do when you don't get it? How do you deal with that failure?
Don't pretend like it doesn't hurt, because it does. If it doesn't hurt, then it didn't mean anything to you. A loss of any kind comes from a place of this was important. And that's why we're nervous. That's why in theater, again, with the students that I teach sometimes, the most consistent question of them in their late teens and early 20s to someone in her 40s now is, how did you find a way to not be nervous? I'm like, well, that's adorable that you think I'm not nervous. I'm terrified.
That's good.
Because it's important to me.
Yeah.
That's your body responding. The adrenaline goes up because this is important. And you start to feel those feelings of I blew it and of loss in an opportunity where you didn't get what you wanted. It's because it's important to you. Don't deny that. Let yourself feel those things.
Yeah.
And then learn as much as you can from that loss, whether it's approaching someone and saying, I love feedback. Is there any feedback you can give me as to why I was passed over for this opportunity, or why I wasn't cast? Or that's an important part of every single industry and every part of your life is if you can't get at least a little tiny nugget of what can I do different next time? Because sometimes the answer is nothing. You did great. This just was not the right moment, the right opportunity. Someone else had a different look or different skills. But even those things, go get some of those skills. Right. Or know how to highlight what you do have to offer more the next time. So anytime you don't get a complete win out of an opportunity that you stepped towards, even though it was scary, stepping towards it was a win.
Yeah. I have always said that fear gets bigger when you turn away from it.
Oh my God, yes.
It like looms behind you. And when you walk toward fear, it diminishes.
Yes.
And then I like to also talk about the no muscle, that as an actor, you audition and hear no many more times than you hear yes. So in life, I tell my children, I tell people I coach, you have to exercise your no muscle. Just accept you're going to hear no.
Yeah.
Grieve it. Learn from it, but know it's part of the getting to yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love the idea of if you turn your back on fear. One of my favorite things to do on any vacation that takes me near the ocean is I love just body surfing, just being out there in the waves and riding the next one, jumping over it, jumping into it, riding it. My husband and I, we went to California years ago, and I hadn't been to the ocean in years, and I forgot that you never, when you see a big wave coming, turn your back, because the wave will then...
I have a visual in my head of what happened next.
Absolutely. And I turned my back, and that wave just nailed me, took me down to the ocean floor, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to die. And I had forgotten that you don't turn your back on the waves.
Yeah.
You've got to greet them as they come so that you know how to ride them. And they still might rough you up a little bit, but you're looking at it head on and you know how to ride this one and the next one and the next one.
That's a great analogy.
It's so important, though, because otherwise you are at the mercy of the thing that scares you if you turn your back. If you face it head on, you can become a part of it as much as possible. This one and the next one and the next one. Yeah.
I know that you like to speak to corporations and corporate leaders about the benefit of an acting degree and how that translates to their world. Can you give us just a couple tips of how does acting transfer to real life skills?
Right. The value of those acting skills in real life. Listening is such an important part of being a valuable human being in any given situation, but especially in the business
Humanity
world.
101.
Absolutely.
Listen.
Relationships, at home with your kids, with friends, listening. But what I think people don't realize is that you don't just listen with your ears. And that's something that we have to learn as actors, is that you are listening with every part of yourself. You have to listen with your eyes. You've got to read the other clues that you're getting from people. You've got to read their body language to realize this person is suddenly really uncomfortable with what we're talking about. And I have the power to change my tone, my word choice, my energy that I'm bringing to the situation. And as actors, we have to be able to read what we call the room, right? You've got to be able to read your audience. If something's falling flat and we aren't looking at them, so we're not reading body language, we're reading something different. We're reading the energy that's coming back to us. So being able to listen from to audible clues, visual clues, but also energetic clues at any given moment means that you can make the changes necessary to not be in control of what's happening, because if you think you can be in control of what's happening, you're crazy.
Right.
But you can be in charge of what's happening and how you are reacting to it. And that is so important in the business world. That's the difference between closing a deal, getting the job, and not.
Right. Yeah.
That's what makes great, not just great employees for sure, but great management level careers and great leadership levels. If you are not able to read the people who look to you for leadership, then you won't know what they need from you.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most important skills that I think we get as actors, that I think definitely transfers perfectly into the world of business.
Yeah.
And parenting and relationships and all of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember being in acting class and literally sitting face to face with a person and just staring eye to eye and trying to listen without words.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
then only allowing one person to speak, and it is quite a challenge because we talk over each other and we want to give our own ideas so I agree with you. That's a very valuable.
Yeah, it really is. I'm curious, since we both went to Wright State at the same time, and we both took the same courses, what would you say is your top 1, 2, 3 things that you walked away from Wright State with that you feel like has been valuable throughout your life since college?
Oh,
because I have my top 2, but I want to hear yours.
So first of all, I think I was a little different than most because I was in college married and I didn't live on campus. And so for me, I knew everybody, we did shows together, but I felt I wasn't socially connected. I think I've become more connected with people because, you in acting school, there's such a bond created because of the exercises and
such an intimacy that you have to adopt.
Right. So it's like we're bonded, but I wasn't super social. So I think, gosh, for me, what did I take away? I think I know I had come from CCM, which was a musical theater program. So for me, I just think in general, I just honed my acting chops. I always rested on my singing voice as that got me in the door, that got me the jobs. And I couldn't do that. So it was bringing forth, it was very challenging and there was a lot of risk involved for me. I felt very vulnerable through the process because I couldn't rely on what I always had as my bag of tricks. So I think that feeling uncomfortable was probably something I took away. I'm very okay with that now.
Yeah.
I put myself out there in a way that I practiced a lot. I think the other thing I took
everything
away,
that we're talking about is taking that risk and putting yourself in a place where this isn't my specialty, but I'm going to work on it so that it is something that I can rely on as opposed to being afraid of, right?
Yeah, and that being comfortable with being uncomfortable. I don't know. I'm not sure. I guess the other thing, I mean, I learned some incredible acting techniques. I had incredible teachers. I don't know. Why don't you share one and I'll see if I have another one.
One of my favorite actual techniques that we learned was Laban.
Oh, yeah, Laban.
Which is about energy.
Yeah.
And I think what we focused on was it being a very physical thing, so that there were 8 different Laban energies, like ring, heavy, or float and light. But throughout my career now, I have realized that you can apply that vocally, but also energetically.
Yeah.
And again, it comes back to that, how can I change this situation? If this person across from me is in a slash mood because they're so angry about something, what is a different energy that I can bring to this? Can I bring a glide to try and calm this situation down?
Yeah.
And I use that.
I would say I do too.
And everything. Yeah. Absolutely.
In fact, my high school son, Oliver, he signed up, they have to do a fine art in high school, and he signed up for dance. And he brought home the Laban book.
I love it.
I was so excited. I'm like, you're learning Laban? Yeah.
Yes, I love that. But the other thing that absolutely is my favorite thing that I walked away with was we were required as seniors to write a one-person show. We weren't given any class to give us training in that. We weren't necessarily writers. And we had to write it, produce it, direct it, and perform it.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't been put in that you have to do this situation, I would have never gotten that opportunity to do something I thought I was not good at, which was writing.
Yeah, fantastic.
And now, how many years later, I've written another one-woman show, but only because somewhere in the back of my mind, I was given that lesson of you can create your own opportunities. You don't have to wait for an opportunity to come to you to grow your career. You can continue to grow it without anybody else's help. Just keep doing it. Create.
I think that is a fantastic place to end our conversation today. And I just, Jen, so much wisdom, so much insight. So thank you for being here and sharing. And if people want to check out what you're doing, where would they go? JenJoplin.com?
They would go to mamasonstage.com.
Oh, I love that.
Which incorporates all of my different career paths. And that's mama with a Z at the end. So mamasonstage.com.
Awesome. And we'll have that in the notes too.
Yeah,
so
great.
Well, thank you.
I want to thank you, truly. You are an important part of my current journey. And this is an honor to talk with you about all of this.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
That was such an amazing interview. And first, I just have to say, I love Jen's talking voice. She is so soothing to listen to. I could just listen to her all day. But I loved how she covered so many things. But what sticks with me is just this process that we go through of taking a leap. Sometimes we have to recover from taking that leap if we didn't land where we thought we would, and growing from it. And that's expected, and that's part of the process of learning that we're enough, that the journey is what makes us who we are, even if we don't end up where we thought we would.
And first of all, that's perfectly put, beautifully put. And that, ta-da!
I know, I love that.
We are enough, even in the process of falling and needing to recover.
I love that she said also that we are everything that this moment needs, because it's not that we're the whole world, we're everything, but that just believing that whatever is needed in a moment from us, that we can deliver exactly that. And if I think about when I've performed on stage, in that line that we deliver, we know that that's exactly what needs to be said to move the plot forward. And I just love, what if we thought about that in every moment that we lived our lives?
Yeah. So this week, ta-da!
Yes, ta-da!
Leap, recover, and grow. If you were inspired by what you heard today, I would love for you to share it with a friend. And also, reviews are the number one way that this podcast will be able to help more people step into their creative life purpose, and I would be honored to have yours. I'm so grateful you joined us for today's episode. I bet you're here because you know there's something more for your life. Whether you're moving into something creative or letting go in order to take that next creative step, I have something for you. My free guide to graceful transitions. You can find it at lzimmerman.com/transitions. And remember, if she made it, you can too.